Yeah. Now he's live. Now he's live. But the okay. Okay. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone here in this part of the world, and probably good morning to the other part of the world where Brittney Nichols is. This is Coffee with Gohar, and we are here once again with a new topic, emotional intelligence. And my guest tonight is Brittney Nichols. And let's talk to Brittney about the subject. Brittney Nicole Connors Savarda is a psychologist by her own right, and she is an author of a top selling book, EQ Deficiency. So, welcome to the show, Brittney. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much, Gohar, for having me. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. Alhamdulillah. Very well. So, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm over what I believe was COVID. The worst part was like the first couple days, and then
Mhm.
the congestion lasted for several weeks. But I'm all good now. I have a few coughing spells here or there, but so
Yeah.
far so good.
So you went through those 14, 15 days of discomfort, a lot of discomfort, a bad throat and breathing issues.
Not severe breathing issues, but enough that I couldn't talk for more than 5 minutes
Hmm.
without having a severe coughing spell or having pain in my chest.
Hmm.
But it wasn't as bad as some people's cases. It wasn't as severe for sure.
Brittany, we have seen during this pandemic that the people are still in a kind of a denial mode, and they are still not wearing masks, and people are not taking those SOPs. So why is it that why the people are in denial? What this part of the psychology is? What part of the brain that's not working for them?
I think it's very complex. There's not necessarily a simple answer. I
Hmm.
think that people are doing what they feel is right, even
Okay.
though it may not be the best solution.
Hmm.
But there's so much information out there. Things are being politicized, meaning that if you believe to be associated with one party, they're telling you that it's taking away your freedoms. And so
Yes.
people are thinking, well, I'm not going to have my freedoms taken away. So they're rebellious to that. So in their mind, they have good intent behind it, yet it can be harmful to other people if they're not taking those precautions. And I think it's that lack of awareness, it's that confusion, what's really going on. Because the truth is, things are just extremely complicated. And sometimes people don't know what to believe. So they go with what they feel is right for them in that moment.
Right. So it's not about being politically correct. It's about being people just thinking that they it's about maybe a liberty issue. Is it about freedom of speech, or it's their right or something? Because not only in America or Europe we have seen lots of people not following the SOPs. This part of the world, which is like Middle East, that this is a little bit better. But Asia, for example, look at India. They had yesterday 320,000,
Yeah.
100,000 people in one day. That infection rate is going to, maybe it's going to have a domino effect, and it's going to be in big time trouble for India if this trend continues.
Yeah. And that's what's so troubling about this is because I think a lot of this stems from that lack of awareness. And part of that is a lack of emotional intelligence as well, because we don't
Right.
take the time to stop and take a step back and say, well, let's look at the bigger picture here,
Right.
right?
Right.
We're not
Right.
taking that time. We're held fast on what we believe to be true. No question about it. Don't try to persuade me otherwise.
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly true. Okay, let's talk about your book, The EQ Deficiency. What is the overall message of your book?
The overall message, so it's a 3-part book. And what I wanted to do is talk about how did we get here? Why are we experiencing a lot of this divide, a lot of this anxiety and stress that we see today? Because there is a reason it didn't just happen overnight, even though it may seem that way, because we have social media outlets and we have more access to news. So it seems like that's what spawned this, but really it's been going on for a very long time. So first I talk about that, and then I talk about the psychology behind our emotions and our actions and our biases to understand how we can kind of control that and correct for all of these social scripts and lack of understanding and awareness that we've had for thousands of years. And then finally, how do we change from the inside out instead of trying to make change from the outside in?
Okay, okay, cool. So, what is an EQ deficiency? Like, what really people lack in their sense of awareness or in their skill set, or what's wrong with that kind of approach where they are not aware of this deficiency?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what I call an EQ deficiency is a lack and awareness of our emotions and understanding the source of those emotions, how they affect our bodies and minds, how they alter our perception of reality or define our perception of what reality is, and how we interact with people and the world around us. And some examples of EQ deficiencies could be micromanagement in the workplace, having that control over other people, not being able to control our emotional outbursts. So when we're feeling angry, instead of asking ourselves, why am I feeling angry? There's a reason for this emotion. Instead, we just react and respond. So it's a lack of that control and understanding as well.
So it is basically what are you feeling and why are these feelings are and how people are feeling, knowing their emotions as well.
Yeah, and how do we control that? How do we manage that? Because sometimes we can get stuck trying to figure out why we're feeling that way, when sometimes we need to be more focused on how do I want to feel and how do I get into a better state of mind that's going to serve me.
Okay. So, how do you see emotional intelligence solving our people problem, day to day matters, and in business world? How do we synergize or interact with people so we are more emotionally intelligent than what we are?
Yeah. The thing about emotional intelligence is it really dives deep. It goes beyond the symptoms. And right now, I feel like in organizations, in society, with our policies, we're trying to put a band aid on the symptoms of things. I call it the
Right.
pain reliever approach, but
Right.
it's not taking care of the underlying issues. So, what emotional intelligence does is it takes care of the source instead of just the symptoms. And if you look at many of the people problems that we face today, whether it's crime, whether it's socioeconomic status, whether it's anxiety, depression, you name it, you look at these people problems, and it all comes from not being self aware, not understanding our emotions, not being empathetic to other people, and taking that time to listen. So I really do believe that emotional intelligence paired with compassion, because I think compassion is a huge component of that, would really solve probably all of our people problems. I know that's a bold statement, but I do believe that.
Yes. Okay. Great. Uh, so, in your book, you talk about emotional energy and how we spread our energy. How can we spread it? Uh, can you explain what you mean by this particular emotional energy?
Yeah. So everything in life, everything around us, even things that don't seem to be moving, they're moving. Everything's molecules, everything's energy. So whenever we feel an emotion, it carries with it emotional energy. When we're happy and excited, it's this very positive energy. When we're angry, when we're depressed, it's a different type of energy. And if you've ever been in a room with someone, you get vibes, right? People say,
Right.
I pick up a vibe from you. And
Right.
it's
Right.
because we're admitting that energy, whether we realize it or not. All of us have an electromagnetic field around us. Every
Right.
living thing has that. And it has been shown through the Heart Math Institute, they've done studies, it's scientifically proven that based on what emotion we're feeling, our broadcast is different. Our frequency is different. And so we have to be very careful not to spread those toxic or negative emotions to other people. And so I tell people that we have two roles to play. The first is to ensure that we're not admitting that negative energy. And then the second is to make sure that we have a barrier so that we are protecting ourselves, like a force field, if you will, from the negative energy of others. So if we do it right, there should be this no man's land, this buffer of their energy and our energy and this protective zone.
Right. Right. Great. Great. You have a chapter in your book entitled "Devillainizing the Villain,"
Mm-hmm.
and you define different type of villains. Can you explain what you mean by this and the different type of villains in the in the detail, so people would like to understand?
Yeah. So when people are very hostile, we see them as a bad person. We tend to attach people's behavior to their identity. And I'm trying to break that habit and teach people that people aren't bad, their behaviors are bad. And there's a reason why people act the way they do, why they act like a quote unquote villain, so to speak. So I identify 4 types of villains. One is the desperate villain. So if you've ever been in a conversation with someone and you're trying to prove your point and you feel like they are not hearing you, they're not listening, then you can get frustrated and you can react because you are desperate to be heard. So that
Right.
is what I call the desperate villain. It makes us seem like a villain because we just don't feel like we're being heard or our needs are not being met. And that is
Okay.
the only way we see being heard is being kind of like abrasive about it. The
Right.
next type of villain is a self-protective villain, meaning that we harden our own hearts to protect ourselves because we've been hurt before. And so we can act like a villain because we don't want to get too close and have our hearts broken again. Another villain is the socioeconomic villain, meaning that we were brought up into a society or a neighborhood where there was a lot of stress and there was a lot of toxicity within the environment. And so, based on that, we were always in a state of fight or flight. And that led to just reacting to our environment and to the situation around us. And then the last type of villain is the nurtured villain. And this is just instilled beliefs, indoctrination, how we were raised within our own family unit to say, well, this is how you should treat this type of person, or we shouldn't have respect for animals, they don't deserve it. That's not that child or that person necessarily. It was what they were told. So it was nurtured within them. So those are the 4 identified villains. And so nobody's really a villain. It's just upbringing, environment, and behaviors that cause people to react in a certain way.
Yeah, their reality is formed that way from the early childhood, probably from parenting, environment, so everything. Now, okay, that's good that you have identified the four villains, so we can look around and find who is who, right? We
And we
always
need
have a
to approach them with compassion and empathy, right?
right,
So
right,
the villain part we should take away. It's de-villainizing those
right, right.
villains. Yeah,
They need patient and maybe more attention rather than marginalizing them in terms of that behavior.
exactly.
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 Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How do we go about developing our emotional intelligence, Brittany?
Mm.
People who are tuning in right now, some have joined in earlier in the program. So, for the benefit of all, how do you see emotional intelligence, people developing it and becoming more aware of it?
Yeah. Great question. Always start with awareness and self-compassion. And I think those two should be paired together because we can become aware that there's a problem, that we feel a certain way. But if we do not approach that with self-love for ourselves, then we can that can turn into shame. That awareness can turn into shame. And then we start to retreat from actually working towards something more effective and more emotionally intelligent in our lives, right? So, how do we become aware? That's the question.
Right.
And there's different types of awareness as well. And I always tell people to start with just being mindful of your environment, both outside of yourself and then within yourself. So you can practice the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of mindfulness, which is what are 5 things you can observe around you? Just focus on those 5 things. What are 4 things that you can touch? So your tactile senses, and really get familiar with how does this really feel? Be present with that. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you taste? What do you hear? And just focus on a few things. Now that is developing an awareness from your outside world. And then you can kind of take it within. How am I feeling inside about certain situations? Does it cause something in my stomach to churn? Do I have a tightness in my chest? Do I notice that I'm starting to get really tense in my muscles? How am I feeling? How is that situation causing me to react? And people say, well, what is the point of all this? Because we go through our day-to-day lives mostly unaware, on autopilot, and we don't really stop and become present with ourselves and our environment. So by doing this consistently every day, you're building that awareness so that next time, whenever you're triggered and you say, well, I don't know why that triggered me, you can take a minute, pause, and really bring attention to what happened. What was the source of that reaction and that emotion?
Okay, cool. Brittany, we had some talk about COVID 19 in the beginning of this talk, right? And some people who have joined in right now. So, what message do you have as a survivor of this pandemic, and you have lost your loved one as well in this pandemic, which was very, very unfortunate? So, what message do you want to give to the people who will be watching it, and maybe later they will be sending it to their friends and family members? What kind of message would you like to people who are still not really taking care of this as a pandemic, and they think it's a seasonal flu or just a thing made up by the doctors? What's your perspective on it as a psychologist as well as a survivor?
Gohar, that is it's a great question. It's a complicated question because my answer will be my opinion. And I want to state that my opinion, as well as other people's opinions, is not the gospel truth, right? And I'm
Right.
basing this off of the information that I know.
Right.
And that is, be conscious of how your response is affecting those around you. because I'm sure things are going on behind closed doors that none of us are aware of. But at the same time, is it going to hurt me to wear a mask? No. Do I really feel like it is going to hurt my freedom? No. I know what I stand for. I know when my freedom is under attack. And when I feel that that is the case, then I will respond accordingly. But I truly don't see any harm in taking precautions. It's good to be vigilant. It's good to be aware that there are people out there who are doing things out of their own personal agenda. And I think that is one reason why so many people feel the way they do and are protesting wearing masks, because there is a reason for that. There is a reason for us not to trust certain people. But at the same time, how is this affecting other people around us at that time? So I always say err on the side of caution and take precaution.
Great answer, Brittney. In fact, we should be aware of not only the dangers due to this pandemic, what it is causing to us, and what we are exposed to. At the same time, it's about social responsibility, that we take care of the people whom we interact with. And when we do not take those precautions, we are involuntarily or voluntarily, we are exposing them, whether they are young ones, children, adults, or seniors. We are exposing them unnecessarily. So it's also about being a responsible citizen, responsible member of the society, to take care of people whom we interact as parents, as managers in business, as leaders, because we have come across lots of leaders in this world where they do not endorse the SOPs, and then we saw the spikes in their countries, people suffering, all that. But let's see, and we all pray for this pandemic to go away and we become more and more aware, socially aware, emotionally aware, and emotionally intelligent by reading Brittney's book as well, and which will be available in audio sometime in coming months.
Yeah, the having COVID, I think it was COVID, having that really slowed me down with the audiobook because I'm doing the recording myself. So I wasn't able to talk for a while, but
Right.
hopefully it will be available within the upcoming months. I'm hoping by the end of June, the latest.
Great. So I will be the one of the first ones to get hold of it.
Thank you.
Okay, Brittney, thank you very much for being here on Coffee with Gohar. It is once again a pleasure for me to have you on the show, and look forward to doing more of it in Coffee with Gohar with Brittney on topics which are more closer to her heart, emotional intelligence, and solving people problem. So this is where we have a lot of synergy and we work together in this area. So wish you all the best, Brittney, with your endeavors and your book and reviews and podcasts. I keep on looking on the Facebook, but I seldom get the time to go through all of them. You are doing a great job with all the podcasts, and your book is on one of the top selling Amazon's list, right?
It's not on the top Amazon list, but it was recognized in Forbes, which was pretty cool.
Right. Great. Okay, thank you very much, Brittney.
Gohar, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittney. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.